So welcome to a Center for Coaching and Organizations Growth Ring event. We're having a little bit of confusion with links, so there may be other people joining us, but for now we're going to get started. And I just want to introduce those of you who might be watching this as a recording to the Center for Coaching and Organizations, which we fondly and more succinctly call CCO. We're a 501(c) nonprofit that's all about providing accessible, welcoming coach training, as well as thought leadership events, primarily focused in the coaching and organization space. So you'll be hearing more about our 2023 Coaching and Organizations Summit that's coming up on April 27th, and about other events that you can participate in and ways you can sign up to receive the newsletter and notice about events. And I can't resist, even though there are three of us on screen right now, who's been to a Growth Rings event before? Yeah, well, 66.66% of us have. That's amazing, Rita. And we're happy to welcome Marcy at this point too. This is our coaching tools potluck. And we're excited about that because it's a real invitation for people to arrive as cooks at the potluck. And many of us have cooked up a dish, brought it to a long, wonderful table full of all these interesting things. And then many of us come as guests saying, you don't want to eat my cooking, but I would love to sample yours. And so we welcome you regardless of whether you're cooks or consumers. And either way, you'll be here to nourish yourself, nourish your coaching practice, share ideas and learning and engage. And we're excited about that. We are a pretty informal group, though on occasion we use slide decks and things like that. And whether there are 3 on a call or 50, it's all about sharing, community, learning, camaraderie, and of course, that thing we love, coaching and coaching skills, whether applied as coaches or as leaders. In the next 80 minutes or so, you're going to be invited to contribute as cooks, and I know Marcy has something to share. I've got a few things to share. Kristen, do you have something you're going to share?
I probably have a couple things I could show, yeah.
All right, so we'll have some fun with that. And just break in for questions, throw things in the chat, whatever you might want to do. But before we get started with coaching tools, what I want to mention is that we all know as coaches that really a superpower we've got that should be our first go-to is our coaching presence. It isn't about devices, activities, or that. It's all about being as fully present to our coaching clients as we can be, so that we can support them by evoking awareness, by building trust and safety, by being so fully present to where they want to go and to the partnering that we have with them. So one caveat I mention all the time is, if you love to use coaching tools and techniques, it's great to design that in when you do your establishing and maintaining agreements, because you can say, hey, I've got these things I use. So look at all these things I have, and they might come in handy, but they'll always be with your permission, your direction, and your sense of whether they might be useful to you. So we're going to now just sort of gently bypass coaching presence, though it comes into the use of tools and techniques. And we're going to first find out what we've got to share and sort of plot out our agenda for today. So Marcy, I know you've got at least 15 to 20 minutes with image prompts, right?
Probably something like that.
Yeah. And Kristen, what would you estimate you have?
Oh gosh, I'm not even sure. I think I envisioned this sort of a breakout room thing. So
okay, well, think about it, and we'll pop in and we'll just ask you at some point, hey, you want to share something here?
Love it. I'm all ears and I'm excited.
Great. So sharing can be, just so Kristen, while you're thinking about it, sharing can be like, Marcy's going to give us some background on the use of a tool that she developed and that she uses quite a bit, and that I've used actually, and maybe even have a chance for us to play with that tool. Sharing can also be about saying, hey, I do this, and the way it works is this, and some of the obstacles I've run into are this, and you ought to be concerned about this, but it can have this kind of an impact. So it can be talking about it can be sharing deeper, and it can even be involvement and engagement. So I'm going to just say, let's get into it. And Marcy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Ooh, exciting. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna share my screen if I have permission to do that, because I'm gonna
Totally.
talk through some slides because I'm all about visual images. So I'm gonna be showing images. Well, hang on just a second. Let me get it started. Let me make it a little bigger. So the product that I want to share with you is called Image Prompts. And these are PowerPoint ready images that you could plunk in a slide and show your client and pair it with an open-ended question. I started creating these. I've always used images a little bit with my clients, but I really started diving into it around COVID time. And I just realized I was creating them just for myself. And I was seeing the impact it had on clients. It just would get them out of their heads more quickly. It would help them tap into their own deep wisdom and answers. So I decided I needed to share them with more people. And I had clients asking, how do I get those? I want to use those. So it turned into a product, and I've made at least 5 collections so far. I think one of them, if any of you know of the JICT images, it's a card deck that was around for quite a while. They decided to quit producing their card deck, but they partnered with me to create a set of image prompts of them. So they're available as well. So what I want to do is share a little bit about why they work so well, a little bit about how I use them, and then time permitting, we'll have an experience using images. Yay! So you all probably know that right brain processes are really those things that are body centered. They're intuitive, they're nonverbal, they're visual, they can include movement and all kinds of things. And we know things in so many ways. So this is one way that we can know things through those nonverbal right brain processes. They work because they bypass the left brain sensor. And our left brains are incredibly talented, right? They are brilliant, they're smart, they're capable, but they have really strong sensors because we're so familiar with them. They're just so natural to us. So right brain processes sneak past because our left brains don't know how to censor that information. And most of us aren't as adept at censoring right brain processes, which will really just get at information differently. And it allows the body or the mind to create metaphors, stories, tap into all those juicy places that your cognitive mind doesn't naturally go to. For this reason, Bev mentioned presence and also design of your sessions. So when you're introducing right brain processes, it's often important to let clients know that it might feel uncomfortable if they're not used to doing these sorts of things. But talk to them about why you're doing it, why you want to use right brain processes to balance out the left brain stuff, and it will get to more information that will be useful for them. It's just helpful to let them know in advance, especially people that are very linear, very rational, very cognitive. They're probably going to get huge benefit out of it, but you might have to sell it just a little bit. It's sort of like improv. The more you believe this will work, the more they're just going to buy into that it will work. So I'll tell you, my favorite is images. Of all the possible right brain processes you can do, visual images for me are really the most powerful, and they're the most accessible for me, I think. And again, there's less internal censorship. They leverage the mind's ability to make associations, and they just naturally elicit metaphor. I mean, if you look at these pictures below on the screen, don't they start to take you somewhere? Like there's a story there. And it's going to be a different story for everyone who looks at them. That's what's so unique. You're not going to have the same response to a picture. So what happens, the magic really happens when you pair the image with an open-ended question. So instead of answering with their brilliant cognitive minds, they're going to answer through an image. And there's so many different kinds of questions you can use, depending on what your niche is and who you're working with. It could be about their leadership style. It could be about what they're avoiding. It could be what their creativity looks like. I mean, you can go down so many paths with the questions, and the answers are going to surprise the heck out of you. And they're probably going to surprise your client too. It's just going to open so much more up. One of the things you need to remember when you do this is you want to spend some time with the image. So you don't want to give them too much time to choose their image. You're going to have a screen of images, and you're going to have your open-ended question, and you're going to invite them to answer the question through an image. Don't give them too much time. If you give them too much time to pick an image, they're immediately going to their thinking brain, and they're trying to analyze what is exactly the right picture. So you need to let them know that they don't know why. They don't have to know why they're choosing an image. To really trust their intuition to be guided, sometimes the image will choose them. But really make it clear, sometimes that fast snap, the thing that jumps out at you is the right thing, and you don't have to know why. So that will help ease it for people who want to just study all of the images and pick the right. You got to tell them there isn't a wrong answer. So it takes some of the pressure off people. So once they have their image, you want to spend some time with the image, having them look at the image, see if there's a story or a metaphor or energy, or, I mean, I have a whole series of questions I'll walk people through, and I mix them up all the time, but you want to be with the image. You want to discover more about what the image has for the person before you link it to the question. So I'm whipping through this pretty fast. So
Yeah, so Kristen, do you have any questions for Marcy yet?
Well, this is really fun. And I'm curious, have you been able to incorporate this in any way with like your virtual clients?
with virtual clients?
Yeah.
I use it entirely with virtual clients.
Oh, okay.
I have never used it in person because I'm not going to show a PowerPoint to an in-person client. So,
I was envisioning physical cards. So I apologize if I missed that.
yeah,
So,
physical cards
okay.
you can do these same things with a physical deck, which is kind of cool to know. But I use these, and I'll show you. I think I'll do the experience next, and then I'll talk about some of the ways I use them.
Great.
Do you have any other questions before I go to the experience? I think sometimes you just have to experience something to get out.
So. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right. So the question that I brought today is, what's your coaching superpower? So I want you to just take 30 seconds, and I'm actually going to use a timer to choose an image. And really just let your intuition guide you. You don't have to know why you're choosing what you're choosing. Sometimes the image will just jump out and grab you. So give you another 15 seconds to find your image. All right. So we're going to be looking at that image, and I'm going to walk you through a few questions to just get a little bit more information from the image itself. So the first question is, what are the first three words that come to mind as you look at that picture? And sometimes it helps to jot these down. What are the first three words that just come to mind immediately when you look at the picture?
And welcome, Mary Kay. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late.
Marcy, do you want to do a quick rundown of what you took us through so Mary Kay can catch up?
All right.
You need to back up for me.
I'll just give you a really brief. I'm giving an example, an experience of a product called image prompts, which are PowerPoint ready prompts that you can use online.
I own those.
You do? All right. I created them. So
I know.
So we're doing an example now with what's your coaching superpower? And I'm going to go on to the next question because y'all have been at it for a little while. You stop the next question is, does this picture take you to a memory or a story or something in your life? Where does it take you? And I'll give you about 30 seconds to jot down a couple notes about where that image takes you. And then if this image were a book cover, what would the title of the book be? And again, no need to overthink, just kind of whatever pops in your mind. What would the title of the book cover be? So now as you look at the picture and you look at your answers to those first three words and whatever story or metaphor came to mind, and then the book cover, what is it telling you about your coaching superpower? So I'm gonna stop sharing so we can talk about what happened, and then I can come back and do how I use them. So what showed up? Where did it take you? What did you learn about your coaching superpower?
Well, I'll jump in because I realized that I was drawn to a picture thinking it was showing something different than it was. So that was really fun. So it was the image of, I think it's a woman with a hat, and she's actually got her arms like this, but I thought her arms were like this. So that was intriguing as it was, but it was really, it was cool because I got words that made sense: opening, light, stretch, hold on to your hat. I thought of BWCA and childhood and freedom and really opening up. The book title was Walk Into Your Light. And it really pointed to me that I believe that one of my superpowers is building deep trust quickly and inviting leaders to light up.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, so thanks. Really fun.
Did you kind of know that before, or did it give you just a little bit different?
I think I forget that just because tons of coaches actually are pretty good at building trust quickly, that doesn't mean it can't still be my superpower.
Exactly.
It's one of those things like we could all have the same one if we want to.
Yes.
It's possible. But the inviting leaders to light up hadn't come to me before.
Good. That's part of the beauty of using
Yeah.
images. It just gives you a little more richness.
Yeah,
You
totally.
might have if you just answered the question straight out.
Yeah, yeah.
Kristen, how about you?
There were some parallels, which I think is so fun. So I love that Beth got to share first. So I picked, there was one in the lower left. It was like a kind of a sunset vibe. And just made me think of like that, those powerful moments at the end of the day when you can kind of reflect on what's going on. And just there's still light, but there's something like wiser about that light at the end of the day. And so I wrote like embrace the day and reflection and things like that. And how I would love for my time as a coach to be sort of that sunset moment, to have that warm, inviting light that has the wisdom. It's comfortable enough to be courageous. And it's also an invitation for people to kind of reflect so that they can invite more of themselves into tomorrow.
Nice.
Kind of that.
Nice. And did that feel new to you too? Was that a little bit different than what you'd thought of before?
I think so. I don't know if I would have used some of those words. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was lovely. Thank you.
That's a lovely image of your superpower, the sunset wisdom coach.
Oh, Bev, you're muted.
muted. You're muted, Bev.
There we go. I loved it when you said there's that, I think you said something like there's that wiser light at the end of the day.
You did, yeah.
And it was like, ooh, kind of leaning into that.
Yeah.
Coach me to my wiser light at the end of the day.
There you go, right? Very fun.
So Mary Kay, I am guessing you've used these before. You have, if you've got them. And I'm looking forward to what you have to share later about how you use them when I talk about how I use them. But were you able to do that exercise a little bit?
Well, I came in late, so I didn't see the actual prompts, but basing off of Kristen's description, some of the things that came to mind as she was describing the sunset were I think I asked I help people really get real with themselves. What the sunset has to do with that is, so what was going through my mind as Kelly was describing the sunset of her photo was, at the end of the day, what do you want people, what do you need for yourself to be happy? And what do you want people to feel or experience when they're with you? And so that sort of that settling at the end of the day, that I ask the questions that help them get in tune with sort of how do they want to show up.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
There is that fullness at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, and I've had the pleasure and privilege of getting to know Mary Kay better over the last couple of years. And honestly, as you were talking, Mary Kay, I could feel myself walking along the beach with you and then settling into like a bench looking out across the sand and the ocean to the sunset, and having that settling feeling that I'm safe, I'm held, and I can really want whatever it is my heart wants, and it's going to be okay.
Thank you. And apologize about the video. I'm eating lunch. It's the only way I could fit this in. So.
All right. Well, I want to share my screen again and just show you some of the ways I use it. And then I'll show you a different screen for some of the ways I use it. So maybe Mary Kay can see the images quick before I
can.
before I take them away. Go to another slide. Come on, go bigger. Sometimes the map changes and it does things differently. All right. How I use them. I use them in so many ways. And you can too. I mean, in groups, definitely online. This is an online tool. But you can use them as icebreakers, introductions, check-ins. So if you're in a meeting, it's a great way to get people to talking right away. You can explore a concept. I use these a lot. And Bev, you probably experienced it when you took the card deck class, but I'll use these to help people get clear on things like, who is your ideal client? What does your ideal client want? What gets in their way? You know, those sorts of things that when people go to their heads, they kind of get all twisted and tangled up, but the image can just peel back a layer and they can get a lot more clarity that way. You can use it after you've done an exercise with them or some sort of experience to kind of debrief it. You could have it be a checkout picture, like what are you taking away, and have them choose an image that reflects what they're taking away. With private, this could be really powerful in an enrollment session or comp session if you do those sorts of things, because if you can have people choosing what they really want through an image, it's going to be a full body experience. It's going to be on different levels. And so I think it could be very powerful there. I use them when I do VIP days. I will have different parts of the day on different topics, and I will weave in the image prompts for those. There's a really cool thing that I haven't done much of, but I think it could work. And it's doing belief work with image prompts where you have people pick an image of what their belief is around a particular topic right now, then pick an image of what they want their belief to be, but then pick a middle one. Pick one in between the two, because sometimes it's too big of a leap from where they are now to where they want to be. So if you could find a midway belief that they could start to embrace right now, you're going to get to that other belief sooner. So that was something I've come up with, but I haven't used it enough yet to know that it really works. So you all can experiment. But there's a lot of ways you can use them. And what I do, I think I'm going to stop sharing this screen. And what I do, I mean, I have a lot of image prompts, more than most of you will, because I created them, so I have them all. And I have a few that I don't sell. So, or don't sell yet. So let me open my slide deck. It's slow, it's opening slowly.
While it's opening, Marcy, I don't know that everybody knows what a VIP day is. Could you
Oh,
explain what that is?
there are people in your world that want more. They want really special, one-on-one, intense, guided experiences. So a VIP day is you one-on-one with a client for 5 to 6 hours, where you're actually a little bit of teaching, some coaching, some work time together. It might depend on the kind of coach you are. I'm a mentor, I'm a product mentor. So there's a big chunk of my work that's not straight coaching. It's really helping people create products. So we might, it could be a whole day just on product development. It could be another whole day on the marketing side of it, putting together their opt-in pages and sales pages and things like that. If it's pure coaching, it may be, maybe they want to map out a plan to be a better leader or to move up in their company. So it's like a deep dive. Think deep dive, intense. Let's just go do it all right now. And there are people that will pay premium to do that with you.
Thanks, Marcy.
You're welcome. All right, so I think my slides are up. So I can share again. I put I put all my slides, all my prompts on a slide deck. So they just sit, these just sit on my desktop all the time without a question. Because then I can I'll just whip through them fast, some of these images. But I could be talking to a client and they're stuck. So you want to listen to when your client gets stuck, when they're constricting, and you want to maybe help them be more expansive. And then you can just interject and say, let's go to an image. If things feel stuck here, maybe they're trying to decide between three things. And they're in their head, and they're spinning, right? Well, I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do that. So go to animals. Animals will kind of break them out of that stuck place and say, okay, option number one, what animal represents option number one? And then walk through it. What are the qualities of that animal? How does it experience the world? How would you describe it? And then go to option number two and assign an animal or creature for each of them. It's gonna open up the conversation. And you can just, if they're already on your desktop, you can kind of go to it pretty quickly. And you can do it with other kind of images, but animals are fun. I'll show you a couple more. These are from the JICT image deck. Oops, I went past one kind of fast. You could have them be flowers or fish. I think that's about all I have on my desktop. But I've used them when I teach courses. I've used them in my group coaching programs. I'm always coming up with new ways to use them. So now my clients, the whole thing we talked about earlier, you got to kind of set it up and let your clients know you're going to be using them. Now I think my clients are disappointed in a group session if images don't show up. So they're used to it. And they've seen some of the same slide prompts multiple times, and they still will come up with they'll choose something different for the question. So they just work great. So,
They do.
and Mary Kay, how do you use them? I'd love to hear if you have a favorite story of how you've used image prompts.
I use them in very similar ways. I use them a lot in the individual sessions when people want to make a change, but they can't, they just are struggling to identify how to get there or what it looks like. We'll go to the cards and then have them select a photo of what their life looks like now, and then select a photo of what you want your life to look like, or whether it's a work setting or whatever their issue is that they're struggling with. And once they pick the images, it just changes everything for them. They start to see things differently. They can articulate, and it helps them start to make the plan. Whereas before it just felt overwhelming for them. Yeah. So that's a really common way that I use them. I use the actual cards when I'm in person,
right,
for similar things. And I use them a ton for helping groups create their vision for the organization in my strategic planning work, because they always go to the verbs and they always go to the mission, and they just can't visualize what would happen as a result of their work. So I use the cards to help them visualize that.
Oh, great.
So those are two of the key ways that I use them.
You're muted again, Bev.
I'm trying to be so good about not having you hear background cats and various things. But Mary Kay, do you remember how you used them at the first Center for Coaching and Organization Summit, the pre-conference with nonprofit leaders?
I do. I think there I asked them to select a card that depicts the biggest challenge in their sector for them. So
And-
it helped us come up with a list of challenges for the nonprofit sector.
And it was powerful, and they went deep and vulnerable fast.
Mhm, mhm.
And I'm going to talk her up because I really believe that was such an engaging thing. And we had people say after that pre-conference, this is the first time I felt seen as a nonprofit leader.
Wow,
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well,
That's
now you do, honey
amazing.
bun.
you know, in I wore a therapist hat for many years before this, but in our therapy, that the whole thing about an image is it gives you just a little bit of distance too, which is easier to go to those vulnerable places because you're talking through a picture. And it just takes a little bit of that heat off of your heart when you're showing it. So I think that's that part of what allows people to go deeper.
So I am putting a link in the chat. Marcy, do you want to talk? I mean, I invited Marcy because she's one of my favorite tools, techniques, not just her own. She actually has a Coaching Toys online store that represents so many massively creative things coaches and others have created that can be useful for coaches and leaders and therapists and educators and everybody else. But when I invited her, I said, hey, do you want to hang out and play? And she said, sure, I'll do that. And by the way, I'll offer a free gift. So
Yeah, I can show you a picture of the free gift quick.
Here is the link.
I made the link simple for you. It's marcysfreegift.com. And so you get a set of image prompts. There's actually three slides, 3 ready for slide prompts in this collection. And you get an online course that kind of walks through a little what I talked about today, but a lot more about using them. So marcysfreegift.com.
Thanks, hon. That's really lovely. So let's kind of do whatever. And let's see first if there are any questions for Marcy before we move on to somebody else sharing. All right. I figure you are brave, bold women. You will speak up if you have a question. So now you brave, bold coaches, does anybody else have a favorite tool or technique they've used? Like I said early on, you can share about it, you can engage us in it, or you can tell us about it. It doesn't matter. This is a potluck and you get to bring that dish covered, open, already cut into pieces, whatever you want. And Mary Kay, I think I saw you take yourself off mute. Does that mean you're going to share something?
I just learned about a new tool that I have not used yet.
Oh,
So let's see if I can remember it off the top of my head. So this is a way to help organizations understand the difference between strategy and tactics. So you have the team, so it depends on the size of them. I'd break them onto multiple blankets or all on the same blanket. So let's say you have 5 people. You have lay down a blanket on the floor and 5 people stand on the blanket and you invite them to figure out how to remove the blanket from beneath them without stepping off of it. And then you observe their process as they talk through that. And you start to hear the differences and you process that through with them to hear the differences between the different suggestions as people are going through it and what suggestions are tactics and what suggestions are strategic. And so as they process that, they start to hear for themselves. Either, maybe everyone went tactical, maybe some went strategic, but others undermined that and said, no, we need to get to the point here. We need to finish this in this amount of time, So you start to see that interplay to where people hold tight to strategy versus tactics and help them understand the difference. So I'm anxious to try it. I haven't yet.
very cool. Very cool.
One thing I do in strategic planning, I don't know if you call this a tool or not, So I find that people often, we give them information, but they don't really grasp it necessarily. So before I start a strategic planning session, I hold up a weed on a stick. I hold up a rabbit on a stick and a carrot on a stick. And then I tell them that one of the most common problems in board discussions or meetings in general is that people go down rabbit holes, they get in the weeds, and they speak before they've reflected, and they cause waves because they truly didn't have time to think about what they were going to say in a reflective way. So I say, whenever I hear someone go down the weeds or a rabbit hole, I'm going to hold up the weed or the rabbit. I'm not going to call any names. I'm not going to repeat what they said. I'm just going to hold it up while we're discussing. As you feel comfortable, I'd love for you to the group to take that over. So if you hear someone, I'll lay them out on the table, grab one of these, and then hold it up. And you don't have to call out anyone's name. And so just the mere motion of holding this up catches people's attention, and they start to connect what it sounds like when someone goes down a rabbit hole because the rabbit is held up. And that connection helps them start to monitor themselves. And I've seen people go, they're talking and they go, where's that rabbit? I need it. I'm going down the hole. And so they're able, it makes it more accessible that they can call themselves out, and they really start to realize when they're doing it.
I
So
love
that's one. And then I leave them with those when I leave to say, keep using these until people in your group really, you start to stay away from rabbit hole discussions. You start to stay away from going in the weeds because you do governance, not management.
Mary Kay, I'm enormously fascinated. Have you ever tried using this with an individual?
No, but that is a great idea.
You said there was a carrot as well, like a third one?
Yes. So the carrot, I use that to say, and this gets a little bit at inclusion and safety, to say just because the question was asked doesn't mean you have to have an answer on the spot. Some people take longer to reflect. Sometimes, when you do a round robin and go, okay, everybody share their name and one thing about them. If you're not ready yet, just say, so I use the carrot to say, I need a moment to chew on it. So just say, I'm not quite ready. So come back to me, circle back. So it gives each individual some control in their sharing pace. And you can use that in a team, or if you're a supervisor, you can use the carrot to say, I need to chew on this a little bit. I'm going to get back with you tomorrow, instead of feeling like I have to give an answer because somebody asked, which I see a lot in group stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what the carrot is for. And maybe even as a group, the group needs to say, we're not ready to vote and make a decision on this. We need to chew on this. Let's set a timeline. When are we going to come back to it? So everyone knows, and you still have to answer. There's still accountability, but it allows for some breathing room for people. Because when you don't allow for that, people say mean things. They say inappropriate things they didn't mean to say, but they're just feeling like they have to say, excuse me.
Yeah, so a couple of things occur to me. One is it's images again, right?
Yeah,
These
exactly.
are the powerful images. The other thing that occurs to me for the individual is if I'm a person who is working on speaking up for myself, holding up a carrot might be my first step to saying I need more time without having to actually have something come out of my mouth.
Yes.
So I could see it as a physical somatic, based in images practice for me to build my strength in speaking up for myself and saying what I need. I can also see it with the weeds and the rabbits because, oh my goodness, I designed with a client long ago. You'll go into this thing. I can't even remember what we called it. How would you like me to stop you? And he said, go like this, make the timeout thing. Well, when people do that to me, I want to smack them. So I had to negotiate with him for a different symbol because I'm just like, don't do that to me. And I am certainly not going to do it to you. So we came up with a different thing. But it was co-designed, and I would check in periodically to make sure that was okay, that I was doing that. And I love the idea, though, that if there was a designed agreement about the weeds and the rabbit, that those things could be on the table. And as the person gained more awareness, they could claim it by pulling the weed or the rabbit. And that even being able to notice and pick that thing up is a way to close that sort of feedback loop that they're growing and that they're building their own awareness of their own process, and that they're growing their ability to be present in the moment.
Yes. And I've seen it do those things. There's one client who her MO is just, she loves resources. And so for every question, she just throws a bunch of options at you and she's just on to the next thing, but she never finishes anything. And so I gave her a rubber lotus root flower. And that is her symbol now. Like, are you willing to let the mud settle before you move on? And that imagery has helped her go, wait a minute, I'm going way ahead of myself here. It was an avoidance technique for her that she didn't have to deal with anything deep if she went on to the next thing. But that imagery, and then talking about the lotus root and how it only grows in the mud, in the murk, the lotus flower does not grow unless that condition exists. So, the metaphor of, for you to grow, what are you willing to do to create the conditions, and connected it to the lotus.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Mary Kay, you are a metaphor queen.
I love metaphors
for these.
Yeah, so I'm curious, based on that, does anybody, or have you used as tools, in a sense, sending somebody off to find an object? And what have you learned about the power of having an object nearby as a reminder, like the lotus? Anybody do anything with that?
Of course.
Marcy, tell us.
Well, I have them where I'll have them look around the room for a symbol of something. And my examples are more in the teaching realm than the straight coaching realm. But I was doing a sales page in a day class, and I had them pick a symbol around the room for each of their features. And then to play with the image in order to beef up their features. So it was interesting. So for example, I have this picture of a crow on my wall. So I grabbed that, and the feature was, I can't remember what the feature was. It might have had to do with some modules or something. So what the crow told me is it takes the straight path. It doesn't follow. It gets there faster. It has a clear vision. So it was a way to beef up the description of the module and use some of that language. I don't think that was the feature, but you get the idea.
Yeah. I just find many people now, if you're on the Asperger autism spectrum, metaphors are a problem for you. But many people, they just relate better to metaphors because they're tangible, especially when we're talking about mind stuff that is not tangible and feelings sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I have used music with clients before, with groups as well as individuals. And it started out when a buddy of mine, Leonard Lang, and we had met swing dancing. We had this whole swing dancing community. And we started thinking about swing dancing, dance in general, but especially swing dancing as a metaphor. And we offered to do a session for our Minnesota Facilitator Network called the Dance of Facilitation. And as part of it, we just used a series of snippets of swing tunes and invited people to just notice in terms, just listen to each of the snippets, write down characteristics of the music or feelings they had or thoughts they had about each snippet, and look at what was their style and what they might need more of in their facilitation techniques.
Like that.
And it was interesting because 2 songs were the same song, done by Glenn Miller in one case and by something like the Squirrel Nut Zippers in the other case. And you can sort of imagine by the names that they sounded very different, even though they were the same melody underneath. And it was fascinating. And I can remember once with an individual client, I had a different set, and these are like maybe 10 seconds. You can hear a lot of music in 10, 15 seconds. And I had something like the classical music when sheeps may safely lay or something. It's this dun da da dun da 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 da, just very gentle, light, lovely thing, pastoral piece. I had Edgar and Johnny Winter's Cell Block Number 9, which is da 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 da. It's just got a lot. I had any number.
Did you have people get up and move?
Well, in the groups, yes, but with this individual person, I had a piece of salsa music that was really whatever, and I invited her to do whatever she wanted to, including take notes as I played each of these things. And I asked her what she needed more of in her life right now. And it was salsa. And I said, what would that mean if you had more salsa? What would you notice about your life? And she went off on all sorts of things and came up with what she was committed to as an action.
Wow.
And, it was great. It was really useful. I think one of the things
That'd be great in a VIP day.
there you go. Take it, run with it, woman, run with it. One of the things, after spending a beautiful hour and a half with Charmaine Roche and Jonathan Passmore this morning, talking about sort of 1 year after their racial equity and coaching study was broadcast, I'm that much more attuned to wondering how my cultural upbringing, including my swing dancing, as opposed to being a ballroom dancer, let's say, or a hip hop artist or whatever, how it focuses my age and everything else focuses the choices I make in music. And so if I'm bringing a set, of 5 to 10 snippets of music, am I really bringing a diverse array? And where might my attempt to bring a diverse array actually have me stereotyping in some way? So like I'm going to pick some police bashing rap music. Now I wouldn't do that because I don't like police bashing or anybody bashing music lyrics. And I'm not extremely fond of rap, but there is some rap I like. Well, it's not about whether I like it. It's about providing a clear enough thing. And that just occurred to me after, this morning, and then our conversation here is, how can I go back and relook at music or any tool I have and say, is this really a tool that is welcoming and inclusive and empowering, no matter anything about my client? But I have found music is really fun. And it's fun for me too,
Yeah, sounds really fun. I'll sometimes just do a check-in and just say, if you were a piece of music today or a genre of music, what would you be? And that's always interesting as people describe their current state, to do it through music.
Yeah, nice. So I want to check in. I've got a couple other things I can share, but I am
I have
curious.
one other thing I could share that's non-image related.
Fun. And Kristen, is there anything you want to share?
That's a great question. So I've been kind of bouncing between my head and ideas and trying to totally soak all this wonderfulness up. Thank you so much for everyone's generosity. Probably maybe a couple quick things I could share too. So, but
Sure.
maybe this is just like the start of the potluck, so I don't have to cram everything in either. So
Right. So how about if you share one, then we'll hop to Marcy, then we'll hop to me and Mary Kay. We'll just go around the room and see what else comes up. And Marcy, I
yeah,
know you have to leave shortly after 1, right?
okay, and it is one.
Yeah.
I'm having fun, so I'm gonna stay a little longer. So
That is too
I
funny.
have a little bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just have a lot.
Well, while she's looking, I can tell you when Kristen graduated from the coaching program, she gave me a gift because she is a Lego master in my mind and just is incredibly creative. And we talk often about who has the flashlight in coaching. And it isn't the coach, it's the client. And how do we follow the beam of the client's flashlight? And she made a little Lego Bev for me that has a flashlight and glasses and gray
Oh,
hair
that's
and
funny.
everything. It's
I
just
love
the
it.
best. It is the best.
What you don't know is I actually have its twin in my house, so it sits on my shelf, and I kind of think, okay, what would Bev do? And I have one for Mary and I have one for Jenny too. So too funny.
You could create a Lego board of directors for
Yeah.
yourself, an inner
Yeah,
board of directors out
it
of
feels a
Legos.
little bit like that, right? Although my ultimate favorite Lego is the, I wish I could show you a picture. I don't have it handy, but it's this kind of warrior woman-esque holding an arrow in this wild colored clothes. And it was assembled by my son when he was about 6 as his representation of me. And
Oh,
I was just
Wow.
like, I could totally aspire to try to be this, to embody this, if that's what, makes him happy about what he connected me. So
Oh, that's fantastic.
that was fun. Oh, I'm gonna have a couple of pop-ups here. So I guess maybe I'm gonna take a quick screenshot because I'm getting a weird little pop-up, and that's gonna be annoying. So doesn't let me. So actually, in one of our growth rings, we connected on the joy work that I do with Jenny Peterson and a couple of other alums, and actually a ACO current student. And so we focus a lot on joy and how to maximize joy, how to use it as kind of a fuel, really. And so one of the pieces that I focus on, like the workshops and things that I've been doing, is around we call it joy stewardship. And this comes up for me with clients when I'm hearing that there is, can you see the little quadrant?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. This comes up for me when I'm hearing about relationship issues or, sort of feeling not seen, but not sure how. And so talk about these quadrants and what I found really powerful. So this is based in positive psychology. And it's this idea that there are 4 ways of showing up to someone's joy. And of the 4, there's actually only one that actually maximizes joy and therefore connection with the other person. So you can have the positive focus, but still the destructive way, and that's the thunder seed, right? Where you show up and, every time we bring up my great story, it seems to remind them of their great story, and suddenly it's all about them and they're talking about their thing and they overpower it, right? So it's meant to be positive. Their good thing made me think of my good thing, but it goes off and they don't end up feeling seen. Destructive, negative focus, that's when somebody just frankly just changes the subject, or there's just no spark. They do not see any light or excitement in your story at all. And so, you can't even get your eyes off the cell phone. It's like this abandonment kind of vibe. And it is very destructive to the connection that you feel with this person. The negative but constructive is I come home and tell you that I got a promotion, and instead of being excited with me, you go, "Ooh, but you were already worried about your work-life balance, and you don't like these people that much, and are picking at it so quickly that there's it now gets overshadowed with shoulds and pre-suffering of that fears that may not exist."
I call that fun sucking.
Fun sucking, yes, exactly. And then there's the positive focus of your joy brings me joy, and now there's extra joy because we're all joyful. And it's really the only one of the quadrants that really grows it and builds connection. The rest of them all deplete at different levels. And so you want to check and see. So it's, how might you have some language around this with that relationship if you're finding somebody in that relationship going into those quadrants? And on the flip side, when you can really start getting this into the language and awareness, you can start to figure out what quadrant are they, the client themselves, in with these people. How are they being a steward of joy for the people that matter to them? And I know for me, when I started doing this work, I realized early in the mornings, I would come down the stairs and I would see my son, and I would instantly have a checklist in my brain of, did you brush your teeth? Do you have your shoes? Is your homework over here? Did you feed the cat? Da, 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 da. And so this sweet little cherub of my kid sees mommy, and then here's the checklist. And recognizing, yeah, my checklist is about keeping him safe and keeping him successful, but that's not what he wants. And that's not what I want him to see in those moments. So it's coming down the stairs and it's taking that moment of, hey, buddy, how'd you sleep? And what'd you dream about it? And connecting on that level, because that checklist isn't going anywhere. I can always come back to it. So I can be a bit more at choice about how I'm showing up and trying to maximize that joy and connection. So that's one of my little tools that I've been using to help get some language around that. I've also got another one, but I don't have the pictures of it, of how we handle our own joy and the ways we get in our own way of that, how we can, pop our own bubble before someone else can, or start doing that comparison of making it more about a shitty gratitude than actually being able to savor and hug it to us. All of those kinds of things. So that's just one of the tools that I have been using.
Thanks, Krista.
Mm.
Marcy, you
Joy,
said
joy is a great one. I mean, you can do a lot of things with joy.
Yeah.
I remember a friend of mine was encouraging her clients to go take, because a lot of people don't know what makes them joyful, right?
Right.
So to create a joy scrapbook or something where you take your iPhone with you and you just, every time you're out and you notice something that lights you up, take a picture. So you can start to collect it. It's kind of fun to have a joy photo album.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
We call those sparks
that's
of joy,
lovely.
right? Those
Yeah, spark.
I know.
little
I was
thing.
coaching someone in an art camp once and they just didn't know where to start, what to draw, what to do. And I just said, go start taking pictures of things that make you happy to look at. And so it was really interesting. She ended up with a collage of all those things that made her happy. But the one I wanted to tell you about, and some of you may know this one already. It's from, I learned it from Sue Walden, who's an improv person and also a facilitator, and it's called the windshield wiper. Does that sound familiar to anyone? If you have clients who are a mile a minute and you need them to calm down, you can do the windshield wiper. And so it really is just having them imagine their hand as a windshield wiper. And I said, I want you to take your hand as fast as your head's going. And you get them going, now just feel that in your body. You let them feel it. And then just go, now cut that in half. And now feel that. Just kind of align with that. Notice that speed in your body. You'll do it slower than I'm going to do now. And then cut it in half again. And just feel that. And then you can do it one more time, cut it in half again. And what you'll notice is they actually get back in their body and their mind slows down. It's just such a fast, easy, quick tool.
I love that.
To stop that crazy spinning.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder and demonstration. I have known about that. I've used it, but it's been a long time and I forgot about it.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
There are so many of these things where we're like,
Really?
oh, I knew that. Oh yeah, I remember that. One thing I wanted to mention, I have got like card deck upon card deck upon card deck,
Our deck.
upon card deck, upon shift deck, you know, all sorts of card decks, which are great and even more. The thing that I want to
Card
remind
decks.
us all is we don't even need a card deck. And in fact, we may have a book of quotes. We may have a book of poems. We may have a book of images. We may have a photo album. Well, the other thing is our clients do too.
Yeah.
And I had a client, and the only reason I remembered this was because I was looking at all my card decks and going, yeah, but what if somebody doesn't have a card deck? And I was like, oh, I know what they could do. And then I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. And I had a client whose Christian faith and the support of the Bible were really, really important to them. And so their card deck, in a sense, was holding a question or a prompt and simply opening the book and sticking their finger someplace and seeing what that passage did to inform the question they were holding. And it worked beautifully for them. And I think most of you probably do use card decks and so forth. And some people will say to us, well, how can you do that virtually if you've got the card deck and they're over there? Well, I often just fan it and say, this is the way this card deck looks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shuffle it on your behalf until you tell me to stop. Then I'm going to spread it out. I am going to slowly move my hand over it. And whenever you're ready, you say there. And I will draw whatever card is under my hand. And I will tell you that their process works through us as coaches. If the link is there, if we have that designed alliance, we can choose for them. Now I will.
I've done it that way, but I've also done it where I say, I'm going to cut this deck into 3 piles, and then I show them the pile. Then I say, somebody tell me which pile. And then someone will jump in, pile 3. Then someone else give me a number, and then I'll count down to that number.
Nice.
So that can work too.
Well, I will tell you there can be upsides and downsides and surprising things with decks, because decks are devised by the deck author, right? And whether they intend it or not, sometimes a deck can appear to be focused for, let's say, women more than men or whatever. So I have this Louise Hay Power Thought deck that I have used for years and years and years. And, you know, the images themselves, they're fine. They aren't all women. They're kind of amorphous. They got lots of words on them. But I'm with when Marcy was saying, you need to sometimes do a little selling for these people who might be really, really left brain, really, really, you know, concrete, sequential kinds of people. So my client was VP of engineering and one of the greatest people. And he was pretty darn concrete. And I go in and he's got a cold. You know, I can tell he has a cold. He acknowledges he has a cold. This is way back before COVID. So you might actually be in the same room with a cold. And so at the end I said, hey, you want to try something? He's like, what are you going to have me try? I said, I was blah, 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 pick a card. Well, he picks a card and it says, I love my body. And he was like, Murph. He was so like, oh my God. So like, oh, here's your card back. But the other side of it was all about nurturing your body and taking care of it, so it could operate at its primacy. And here he was with a cold. And I said, yeah, I know it's probably uncomfortable in the workplace to have something saying you love your body. But really, right, really? And he was sort of like, well, yeah, that's true. But there are sometimes unintended consequences. And yeah, so
Consequences are gifts, you know, depends how you-
yeah. I have also, by the way, used Far Side cartoons and invited people to pick a Far Side cartoon that it's kind of what Mary Kay did with the nonprofit leader pre-conference to the first summit, was, you know, what image again really speaks to your challenges now. And of course, Farside has some great things like the old crisis clinic that's on fire and going over the waterfall, you know, so, yeah. Mary Kay, anything else this makes you think of, or anybody else? Kristen, Marcy?
May I share my screen?
Absolutely.
I thought of, let's see, I got to get to it now. So this is something I use with teams or organizations. It's based on Brene Brown's BRAVING acronym, which is the anatomy of trust. So we go through to use the jars. We actually have. You can use this in a workplace or even in a meeting to have people identify what are the kinds of things. So we use the example of, when you're in grade school and the teacher says, it's either a marble jar or you get a star on the board when the class does something good. And then when you have so many stars, you get a pizza party. So the marble jar is the same concept. So when someone does something that builds trust with you, so first I go through the BRAVING, the anatomy of trust, which is boundaries, responsibility, I'm forgetting my accountability, the vault, integrity, NG, let's see, non-judgment and generosity. So you go through that first and give examples of all these different things, and then have people come up with ways that people on the team have added to their marble jar, and then things that people have done, and there's no names used, but things that people have done that have detracted. And then you put those lists up on the board and talk with them and dig into those a little bit. And the overall point is that you don't build trust in a day, but you can break it down in a day. And it's all these small things we do that give people the cues about whether or not we're trustworthy or not. And so we can be noticing the jar, some people, depends on the workplace, will put the jar in their workplace and use it as part of their team meeting to see where their meter is on building trust and degrading trust, so they can talk about that. And one woman actually said she was the ED for an organization. And once she found out that, I can stop share. Once she found out that being accountable, doing what you say you're going to do, how that builds trust or takes away from trust, she had a major aha moment and said, I've been breaking trust with my team since I started because I don't want to say no to anybody. So they ask me if I can do it, and I say, I'll get it done. And then I don't deliver on time because I'm too overscheduled. And I had no idea the impact I was having on trust by doing that. Instead of just saying, I can't get it by Friday, would Tuesday work for you? And so giving examples of the behaviors and the anatomy about, trust isn't a one-time deal, and there's many ways to build it and break it. So that's one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. That reminds me of another.
I probably need to go too. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, Marcy.
Yeah. marcysfreegift.com. Don't forget.
Yeah. I stuck it in the chat again.
All right.
Take
Bye.
care.
Nice to
We'll
see you,
again.
Mary Kay. And
Nice to see you too.
Bye.
So Mary Kay, that reminded me of something for team coaching or facilitating or for events that I would imagine you've used, where you take a ball of yarn and you have people in a circle and you throw it back and forth. You just can't give it to the person next to you. And you create this beautiful web. And I know I'd gone to Michael's. It took me forever to figure out what yarn I was going to get, but I got this wonderful multicolored yarn. And I was doing this with a group from one of the hospital systems, with specialty nursing group. And they passed it all back and forth, and it was this beautiful, beautiful web. And then we tossed a ball in it, and we all came together. So it was very loose, and it the ball would drop through or whatever. If we held it tight and we all maintained our own presence with the web, we could bounce it, we could move it, we could do all these things with it. And then I brought out a pair of scissors and said, but you know, when each time we break trust, we break a part of the web. And I went to cut it, and one of the leaders said, don't you dare. Even though it was obviously it was my yarn. And you know, they whatever, but just no, I want to keep this. I want to keep this web. And it was interesting how, in a way, how quickly that creation became something that that leader wanted to preserve. And
Yeah.
so it was imagery, it was engagement, it was somatic, you know, yeah, and I can't remember who first introduced me to it, but I know.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Well, it's so great that you joined us today, and we have been recording. And I'm wondering if there's anything else you want to add to our potluck before I wind down and make some announcements.
I can't think of any at the moment. I mean, my mind is spinning now. Like, I got to go revisit all my tools and see what I'm forgetting about. I'm going through the ORSC training.
Oh, wonderful.
And I just love it. And we got so many new tools there, but I love their third entity tool to use with individuals and organizations. It's fantastic. So
yeah. ORSC is powerful training. There's so much good training out there in the world.
Oh, I know it's hard to decide. So I finally landed on one.
Yeah, and it's a reason when you're at a conference to make sure you do stay to the end of a session, because sometimes they have a drawing. And that's how I got to go to ORSC training. Is I was at I believe it was one of the Midwest coaching conferences, ICF coaching conferences. And Maria, is that right? Anyway, one of the ORSC people was doing a session, and they did a drawing for an ORSC course, and I won it. So
did you go through fundamentals?
Yeah. So that was just delightful, delicious, fascinating, challenging, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So we may very well do another coaching tool potluck in the future, which will be fun. But I want to, I'll ask you to throw a takeaway or two in the chat if you want to, Mary Kay, but I want to, for those folks who'll be watching this as a recording, and who knows when you will watch it, but I want you to be aware of some upcoming events. We will be having our 3rd annual Coaching and Organization Summit on April 27th. It is virtual. There's early bird pricing until January 31st, but if you are an ICF Minnesota member, there is early bird pricing forever. And if you are a nonprofit leader, there's special pricing for you. And if you run into something where you say, even the nonprofit rate is something I cannot do, but I am so committed to doing what I can so I can attend, we invite you to be in touch, and we'll have a conversation about that. And I want to say that the first 300 folks will be getting a free copy of Michael Bungay-Stanier's new book. He is our keynote for this conference. We have an even more global array of speakers, and I encourage you to go to the www.centerforcoachinginorgs.com and click on Summit, and you will find a link that will show you all the topics and all the speakers. And we're also going to do another growth ring in May, and there will be information about that. If you aren't already signed up, please use the www.centerforcoachinginorg's website to find your way to getting on our mailing list, and you'll get what we call our regular-ish newsletter, which has all our events that are coming up. A coach's corner, which is an article by often a seasoned coach, but not always. information about our community and invitations into sharing and even playing, because play, there is wisdom to foolishness, and we believe in that at CCO. We also will be launching cohort 9 of our executive coaching and organizations coach training program in September, with an orientation in August, and we'll be doing open houses if you want to learn more about that training. So go to that Center for Coaching and Org's website and go to resources, and under resources, you'll find an event calendar that will show you when the upcoming ECHO open houses are. So I'm just going to read what Mary Kay put in the chat and add some of my own about some of the takeaways. So the power of visuals in coaching, the benefit of sharing with peers, reignited passion, and learning new things. And that's one of the things that I wanted to mention too, Mary Kay, because it's just the magic of people coming together. One person says that, somebody says, oh, and what that makes me think of is this. And the person goes, oh, and what that makes me think of is this.
Mhm.
And that is one of the blessings and powers of community. So I hope all of you will stay connected to the CCO community, as well as the communities of coaches and leaders using coaching skills within your organizations. And if you're anywhere near an ICF chapter, we hope you'll take advantage of those offerings and lend your time and talent to your professional chapter. And for now, we'll just say, see you at the summit. Take care. Bye now.